Hey everybody, it's your old pal Chuck, and I'm back with another review. And today we're taking a look at From the Transformers crossover line. If there's something strange in your neighborhood, who are you going to call? Transformers. This is the Ecto-1 Transformer. It's the Ecto-1 ambulance that transforms into Ectotron. And also included and somewhat overlooked, we do have a Slimer figure. This is made by Hasbro. You guys want to mention that Mattel, who has a license to Ghostbusters, they came into an agreement or whatever. This is really cool. It is a somewhat of an online exclusive. Hasbro Pulse, GameStop. So you'll have to go those routes to try and get this figure. It has released early in Canada through EB Games, which is how I got the figure. So there's about that. Let me go ahead and remove Slimer. Slimer's just a little ghost figure. It's solid rubbery plastic with a little hole in the bottom that you can peg them on to various parts of the top of the ambulance, but it's really nice to have. For those of us who grew up with the Ghostbusters cartoon as opposed to the movies, you know, Slimer was an iconic part of that show. Other than that, you know, here's the ambulance. This is the Ecto-1 from the first Ghostbusters film, and I think Hasbro did a really good job recreating it. We're going to talk about these rubber parts a little bit later on. I am really impressed with those, but it rolls quite nicely. Unfortunately, you do have some gappage there due to, you know, the transformation and what have you, but it's a solid figure, and I am very, very impressed with it. So we'll pause, and we'll get into the transformation. Okay, start the transformation. You want to go ahead and disconnect this tube from the front of the car. Then you want to come up the side here, and you're going to unpeg this little ladder piece from the top of the ambulance, and then come around the side here. This blue tubing is connected in 1, 2, 3 spots to the ambulance. That all needs to disconnect. And once that's done, you go ahead here and remove this piece from the side. This is the little wand for the backpack. We'll put that off to the side. And you're going to lift this whole section out. And this whole section will become the backpack. Basically what you're going to do is detach this blue rubber piece. And I do want to mention, I've transformed this figure a few times. I really haven't noticed any cutting, tearing, or stretching with these pieces. They peg in well, they hold in place, which I think is very important. And hopefully they'll last over time. But once you have that all straightened out, you want to come in the side here, rotate this red piece down, detach this flat piece from the bottom. You'll start to rotate it out, and then what you want to do is going to fold this whole section down. The white will sit in that groove there. This will come around, and hole right where my finger is will peg into that white section. Like so. Oh, I almost made it. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Before you do that, you definitely want to come in and take that little plug into that little section right there. That'll curl up, and then you can just peg everything together. And there you have the proton pack ready to go. The next step is you want to come in and plug the end of the wand like that, like so, right in. And then you'll just come up the side here and plug that in, and there you go. We'll fool around with that a little bit more once we have Ectotron properly transformed. But once you have that backpack removed, you want to come into the sides here. unpeg them, and then they're on a double hinge. So you want to make sure the black hinge is all the way up so that the doors are then sitting flush, and then you'll rotate it down so it's at a bit of an angle. The one on this side, I notice sometimes in car mode it doesn't sit right, so you'll get a little extra gapping, but nothing too noticeable. I mean, it does happen with transformation. You do break that seal and you do end up with an extra panel line, but bring that up and fold this over. I do want to mention at this point that on the back of the box, this is licensed from General Motors. This is a Cadillac ambulance, so kind of really nice to have that, you know, that it did get the license and all that. I guess that's from, like, the movies and stuff. So once you have that done, you're going to turn the car over, come down to the bottom here, fold these black sections down. That'll be the feet. And then you're going to open up these leg panels, just like so, and you're going to pull out the leg section. It does tab here into the back of the ambulance. And once those are straight, fold these panels back up and separate the legs. Next, what you'll do is come in with your thumb here and flip out these little heel spurs on either side, and you can stand the figure up. And we have two, oh, and this little ladder piece, I usually like to leave it like hanging down off the side. And here's the first complaint that a lot of people have. The coloring is not 100% accurate to the jumpsuits. I can understand the complaint, but I can also understand that Hasbro was probably trying to do some sort of hybrid design. The second issue is these joints are a little bit on the loose side. Believe it or not, Ectotron is based on the mold that was used most recently for Power of the Prime's Inferno, but was first used for Combiner Wars Hotspot. So if you're familiar with that mold, you know that it's been around a few years. So once that's done, you want to come into the top here, separate the front of the Ecto-1, bring the arms down, just like so. You'll rotate them forward so this red piece is facing towards you, and then proceed to bring the arms down. They don't peg into place. Would have liked them to peg into place, but then again, you do have this little bit now where you flip out the hands, and they do actually friction to place quite nicely. Thankfully, I think after a couple transformations, I've loosened them up. Now what you want to do is come up to the shoulder area here, and you'll pull down on this black wheel while pushing up on the front of the ambulance and rotate that forward. Interestingly enough, that's on a ratchet joint. Of all the joints here, that's really one of the few, if any, ratchet joints. So then you're going to do the same thing on this side. Bring it forward. That, you know, helps close up the arms a little. And then open up the chest here. Flip out the head. And there you have Ectotron in robot mode. Now, one of my big complaints is the goggles are fixed. They are, I thought maybe you might be able to raise them up. You can't. My other complaint is I would have liked to have had wrist swivels just to help with holding the Proton wand. Some people are complaining about the lack of waist joint and basically neutralizing any legitimate posing. But I think Ectotron does a fair enough job. Now, you do have swivels here. You do have that joint there. You have an outward joint there. So these are really like shoulder pads. You do have a double arm bend, a swivel at the elbow, lateral and forward hip movement, as well as a respectable knee bend. Like I said, there's no wrist joints. There's unfortunately no ankle joints, but I don't have a problem with that. I know some people do. They also feel that there should be some sort of Autobot logo or Ghostbuster logo here in robot mode. Again, I can kind of understand why it's not there, but I also understand why it should be there. Now, to continue on, we're going to attach the backpack. There's a tab here, slot there. There's a slot here, a tab there. So you want to line everything up and just try to get it in. And it holds for the most part. With some fiddling, it might come out. And then, of course, you detach the proton wand from the back, bring it around. You can rotate the hose out to the side, so Ectotron can hold it by that peg. I know what some of you are going to ask. This really isn't how the Ghostbusters hold their the wands. We just pop this out of the hand. You can get it to hold, Ectotron to hold it like so, but unfortunately the lack of the waist joints kind of makes it hard for the figure to hold it like believably, like in an offensive type of maneuver. That's why I tend to display it holding the wand, excuse me, as a blaster. I think that works out best. That's really the best case scenario. And again, you see how I'm just like popping that hose in and out? That's something I was really worried about, and I'm kind of glad ended up working out quite nicely. You might have just noticed that one of the heel spurs popped back in. That's something I've had happen on occasion, and unfortunately I did just have the backpack pop off. That is an issue, like I said, with fiddling, but for the most part, once you have everything lined up and what have you, you do get it holding somewhat well. So, yep, trying to get him into like a little pose here, but all in all, I like the figure. But we'll pause, and I'll give you my final thoughts. So I did go ahead and just have Slimer sit there on the shoulder. It's not pegged in or anything, but it can sit there. Like I said, I like this figure, but I do understand where people are coming from with their complaints. They wanted a little more articulation. They wanted a more involved paint scheme. And when and you got to keep in mind, this is Hasbro in 2019. This is a figure that's going to appeal to a niche market. It's not a mass retail release. It's going to be a retool. It's going to have the bare minimum of paints. I think they did a fantastic job. And as of this recording, they just revealed the San Diego Comic-Con 2019 Optimus Prime Masterpiece 10 painted as Ecto-1. And it looks like that they're giving him the backpack, and retooled the ion blaster to plug in so it'll work as a wand. Which I think that explains why we got that new part. But, I mean, people in 2005 had a design, a little sketch using Cybertron Red Alert, and that was 2005. This is 2019. If you're a fan of Transformers and of Ghostbusters, I recommend the figure. If you're just a Transformers fan, you really already have this mold, and there's nothing new. Well, I mean, there is a bunch of new tooling here, but if you've transformed it once, you transformed it 1,000 times. And I don't know if I can recommend it. And if you're strictly a Ghostbusters fan, you're probably going to have a lot of issues with the paint detail and stuff like that. But it is what it is. I mean, if I'm honest, the most excited thing I am about this set is having a little Slimer. I know, I'm silly like that, but what can you do? So, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is available on Hasbro Pulse, GameStop. If you're in Canada, it's at EB Games, where it's actually on shelves now. It was released early. That's how I was able to get mine. So, yeah, for your old pal Chuck, this is Ectotron and Slimer. I ain't afraid of no ghost.